Hi guys, welcome back to the Laurel Studios. We're going to be improving on the user authentication where we do the login and the register right there, and we actually use retrofit and MySQL where we use the slim PHP framework to write the web service. So we'll be creating a to-do task, and each user will be able to create a particular to-do and actually assign a date and get that saved into the cloud. Instead of us using the SQLite database, we have something that could be called or could be fetched from any devices, from anywhere the user gets to access the application. So right there in the web service, we'll be adding some functionality to the PHP Slim framework. We have the create user, the user login, and we'll be having the create tags. Let's get to add the title of the tags, the date, the time, and the tags description itself. So you have right there as a function. We'll be using the post to get that done. So we're actually going to walk. I'll be walking you through on how to achieve this, and I'll get you acclimatized with that. We're going to be talking about this function, the create tags, that calls the verified required parameters, where you're going to pass that to array, the title, the username, the tax date, the tax time, and the tax itself. You post that and save that to a variable. The variables you could see right there, and you instantiate the DB operation. That's where the operation is being done. This is just the PHP Slim to get the API to point down the URL to the right path. And now you get to call the operation, and you have the create tags function right there in the DB operation class that expects five parameters: the title, username, tax date, time, and tax. Now we're expecting some responses, two of it, response 0 and response 1. 0 is sounds successful, that's the tax registered successfully, while the error code 1 will actually depict that there's an error while we are trying to register a tax. So you are going to have the echo response 201 for successful registration, while echo response 200 for an error. So that's just it. Let's get to look at the include statement, the DB operation. The function actually carry out the creation of the tax. You could see right there the method to create a user tax. It takes the title, username, tax date, tax time, and tax itself as the 5 parameters, and it actually issue out a SQL query, insert into the tax table, create a table right there in the PHP you pass in the fields needed and the values. So you bind the parameters that you actually want to insert into the table, and you return 0 if successful and return 1 if it's an error. That's why we could catch those return statement or return value, and we point the response to it. So that's just how the PHP web API will look like. So looking at the PHP so we could actually look at the database, which is demo. We have the tax table, and the tax table has the ID, the title, username, tax date, tax time, and the tax itself. You could see we have one entry right there. So we'll be creating one more to actually test out the application. So we have one entry already, so you should take note of that. Heading straight to Android Studio, let's get to consume this API. So we're actually going to be creating another interface after a successful login. Take us to the dashboard, and when you get to the dashboard, trigger the click on the floating action button to get the form displayed, so that you could actually insert your tags into the MySQL database. So that's just what we'll be covering at this point in time. Let me close most tables so that we could actually start from a good note. So I'll be closing that, and we'll be starting from the build Gradle. Let's get to do that quickly. So let's start from the build Gradle. In the build Gradle, you need to add one dependency, the material datetime picker. which is going to be used for the time and going to be used for the date. So we'll be using that rather in the course of this application. So cool. From here, we look at the layouts. From the layouts, you should understand the flow of this implementation. In the layout, we're going to be having the dashboard, which we had already. We're going to be adding two other layouts, the tax layout, which is actually going to hold on to the form basically. You could see from the user experience there. We have a tax title, we have the date, we have the time, and the description with a big submit button to actually get this saved to the MySQL database. So that's just what the user interface is going to look like. And we have the tax item that's going to be for the recycler view. After you might have saved successfully, you need to fetch what you've saved. So we'll be covering that in the next tutorial just to make this kind of wrapped up and short, so it could be easily followed by my good viewers. After this, let's head straight down to the classes. In the Java classes, we have the add tags, we have the dashboard already. From the dashboard, you trigger the floating action button down to the add tags, which is this interface you see, to add that right there. So that's just where the logic is going to be light at this point in time. So from the dashboard activity, we'll get to look at all the implementation. Now we just only have the FAB, which is the floating action button, and the recycler view. We'll get to implement the recycler view later on, and instantiate the FAB, call its ID, set on click listener to that, and override on click method to call the intent that push down to the add tags activity to stack the activity based on the intent object. So that's just how you're going to trigger the add tags. So we'll move straight down to the add tags where we get to look at that. So before I actually finish up with the add tags, I would like to look at the network implementation that we actually did here. We did some juicy stuff here from the network, from the route. You could see we call the create tags, which is the endpoint, the create tags, which is actually going to look exactly like what we have right there in over here. Let's get to look at that in the index.php, the create tags over here. This the create tags. So that's the endpoint back to our class, and we have the generator, the data service generator. Now let's point at the API rather than the service, the user service. And what we're going to do, we call the create tags as the post, and we have a method right there, the create tags, that takes the parameters needed, the title, the username, the tax date, tax time, and the tax itself as the fields that will be used to save all these values into the database. So from here, we'll be looking at how we're going to actually consume that in the add tags method. So we'll actually cover this add tags so that we'll be able to know how we're going to save this right there into the SQLite database. So right there in the add tags, it extends the app compact activity and implements the time picker dialog with the date picker dialog. You're going to set the listener to the two implementations, the time and the date. We have the fields right there, the edit text title, the edit tax title rather, the description, that's the title of the tax, and the description, they're all edit text. We have the submit button, and we have a text view that's going to actually display the date and the time, a calendar object. We have the integers for the year, month, hour, minute, day, the real year, and the minutes as well. So these are all integer values, and a string to actually hold on to the value for the time, the date, the progress dialog that is going to intermittently kind of run when the process of interacting with the API is started, and the username as well. We'll be expecting to get the username from the login. Once you log in, it's going to return some values, which in turn are saved to the shared preference. From there, you could extract the username. So we're actually going to be doing all that right now. Calling the add tags layout in the onCreate, and initializing the views, which I've just talked about. Calling the preference utils, that's the shared preference, the username, because you saved right there login and you're trying to pass that to the username, right? The variable, the string variable. And you have the instantiation of the calendar instance, where you get the present hour of day, you get the present minute, the year, the month, the date. So you're getting the present based on any time you're launching the application. And when it comes to month, in the Java library, you need to add one to your month, so that you're going to have the present month. It's just a workaround around the whole structure of the calendar utils in Java. So that's done. So from there, you could have the present date by calling the day with the forward slash, concatenate with the month and the year. You have your date. The same thing goes for the time. You have the hour, concatenate with the colon and the minutes. So you have the hour and minutes. Now you have the submit button where you get to initialize its view as well. So the date text, you could set the type, set text to the date, which is the present date. You could have that displayed. So once you launch the app, there's going to be a present date showed. That's just the essence of that. Now the button, which is the submit button, you set on click listener to that. You call the view on click listener, and you provide the on click method where you're going to pass a method or do something when you trigger the button. So what you're going to do, you're going to call on the submit task method. We'll get to look at what that method is going to do. So we have some helper method right there, the set time that is going to set the time. So this method is going to be triggered from the time interface. You have that right there in the on click. You should look at it again. Set time. Set time is right there in the on click. You can see set date. You have set time somewhere underneath set time. So you have that specified right there. So cool. We could continue with where we have. Let me close this so that I could be able to see the attacks. That's the set time. So the set time calls on the calendar instance called the time picker dialog, where you're going to pass the hour of the day and the minute. So if it's 24-hour mode, just put that false. You don't want the 24, you just want it to actually run PM, AM, and things like that. You set the theme doc to false, and you show the dialog by instantiating the fragment manager. The same thing goes with the date picker. You call the year, the month, the day of the month as well, and you show that just like the way you've done. And you have the on time set. You call the radial picker layout. That's the radial. That's just when you're just the analog style of wristwatch. So you have that set up, so you could actually swivel around to set the time you really need. So if the minute is less than 10, you call the hour of the day, you have the hyphen, you call the minute real, and if it's not, you call the hour of the day with the minute. So no need of 0 if it's less than 10. So instead of having, like now you have 16:05. So it's actually going to set 05, not 16:05. So that's just what that means. Now we're going to set the time by converting to 12 hours, because it's actually going to come in a GMT format, but you need to convert that to 12 hours. What you're going to do, we have a helper method which is going to assist us. Let's get to look at where that method is being called from. Wow, it's called from the convert class, which you have right there in the helper package. We have the convert to 12 to 24 hours, and we also have convert to 12 hours. What it's going to do, it's going to take the whole bunch of stuff, convert that to the simple date format, parse it as the date object, and convert it to the hour, minute, and probably seconds if you will need, and with AM, PM. So that's for the 12 hours. For the 24 hours, it doesn't need the AM, PM. You could see the format that is going to convert it to. It's going to convert it to hour, minute, AM, or PM. Cool. So for 24 hours or for 20 or for 12 hours. So let's move on. The same thing goes with the date set. It's also going to call the date speaker dialog, show that out, set the appropriate day and month, set it to the date text. So that's when you try to select a kind of date and month. You could understand what that flow is. We have for the submit tags. Cool. The submit tags trigger the whole stuff. It's going to take the edit tags title, get the text, convert to string, and also trim white spaces. The same thing goes for the description, for the time, and for the date. You can see it's extracting the values, passing it down to a string variable to use. You have the text title. You're testing if it's empty. You set an error to the title. Please fill a text title. If the description is empty, you set an error as well to the edit text. Please fill text description. If not, you have those two set up, you could move ahead to actually run these and pass all these values to the database. How are you going to do it? To call the user service, call the data service generator. We have the user class, the get application, which is the context, the base URL. We've talked about this in the first tutorial. The base URL. You call the call. This is the calling class that is expecting the model that is expecting those values. The response, that's a class right there. You have the call. You call the tag service, create the service or create the tags. That's a method that's going to trigger this action. Where you're going to pass those parameters: the tags title, the username, the tags there, the tags time, the tags descriptions. They must be complete, or else it's not going to even compile. You call and queue, instantiate the callback, override on response and on failure. That's the two responses you need. When you're overriding that, you could have the dialog. Just hide it. You don't need the dialog to show when you have a response, be it successful or not. So after that, you get to look further. Is it successful? Is the body not equals to null? Are you having a response? Because you're expecting a response body. So if it's not null, let's move further to pass those body to the message object so that you could actually use that with the set and get values you have in the pojo. The get error, the get message, and the get some other aspects you have right there in the message class. So you're having the get error, pass that as a boolean value. The get message, pass that as a string value, and you toast that to the user. That's the response message since successful. Yeah. And if not, if the successful is not gotten, it's going to spit out a toast message and also hide a dialog that's unable to add record. And on failure as well, because you could have a failure, probably internet connection or something happened, unable to add tags. It's also going to show as a toast. So the init dialog, that's the progress dialog that will be creating a kind of pause between those processes for you to see, for the user to see something while loading. Now you have the show p dialog to hide it. Now on successful message, you should just try to empty some stuff so that user could actually see that, wow, yes, something has been done. Just empty the text title, empty the description, and you're cool to go. So you have that set up. We'll be looking at another aspect in this implementation. You've added a text. Now you need to visualize those tags. These are all called from the API that's saved right in the MySQL database out of your application. We've talked enormously about the SQLite database. Now we are taking almost all our data out of the Android environment, and we are actually placing that in the cloud or somewhere using the API in the MySQL database, SQLite database out there, Postgres. You could Node.js. We have different server-side implementation that you could attach to your Android application. So this is just a MySQL database, and we are cool to go. Now let's get to look at the manifest. The manifest, we're going to register the attacks activity. So it's very important over here. You have to register that. Call its parent activity name since there's going to be a back button, and it's going to go back to the dashboard. And you have the metadata of the implementation. Cool. So with this, I'll be running this in an emulator for us to see, since we are actually running locally. Let's get to look at our emulator, the AVD manager. So I'll be coming back in a Chiefy to actually get this finished. So don't go anywhere. We have it right there. It's up. So we're going to actually run the code on this emulator, and we're going to test it and see. Insert a new record. Let's get to look at the demo. I have the demo over here. The tags, the users first, so that I'll be able to know the login access, and from there I'm going to create a record so we could actually wrap up things right there. So let's be patient for this to run. and to start up, and we're going to actually run this guy on it. So we'll get you to actually stay for a while to make this startup. All right, it's up. So let me run the code, get it running, push it up, push it up, push it up. It's an emulator, so it sometimes could lag your PC. Depends on the RAM space you have. So right there, does have a module RAM, which is also okay. So let's exercise a little patience, and let's get this running on the emulator, so we could actually get to see what the application is going to look at. So in the meantime, I'll implore you, my good listeners, to learn some other videos in the channel that are all very, very explicit and educating as well. So it's actually very useful. And lay your comments, I mean intuitive comments, not just the sake of just commenting. Let us have your view concerning some implementation that we've done. And I really apologize for some of my older videos that the voice clarity is not too good. I've been able to work and to really make them get much more better in subsequent videos. So I really, really apologize for that. And at the same time, I would like to implore those that have not subscribed to the channel, please do. This will actually encourage us to really do more and keep upgrading and keep updating the skill set, and also delivering the top-notch implementations that are promised from the start of the channel. So I will actually implore you to click on the subscribe button, get subscribed to the channel, so you could get all the videos and all the implementation right on course. So that, and put on your notifications to actually see any of the video that's been launched. So we are having our application kind of installing the APK now, and it's right on its way. I'll look at something quickly. Cool. So it's going to be launched right now. So I'm expecting in a few seconds. Cool. So let's get to look at a user, Adege. Can you remember Adege only have one record? So let's quickly install, login into Adege with password, Adege. Login right there. Use authenticator successfully. We have this loading. Don't worry, we get to talk about that interface. Now let's get to insert the first tax. What should we call it? Let's say recording. Let's call it recording. We get to explain what it is. Recording. Now the date. Cool. That's July 12th, 2018. I'm so perfectly okay with that. The time, 10:55. Perfect. The same time we are, just let's shift that to 12 p.m. 12:55 p.m. Cool. And the description, let's say recording the YouTube video. So YouTube to video. It's kind of slow, but we'll be fine. Cool. So I'm fine with this. Let me submit. Right, tax registered successfully. Now let's get to look at that right there on our interface. Probably it's actually over here. Okay, while we have right there. So we're going to the tax table. Can you see that? ID 2, that's the second one. Title, recording. Username, Adege. Tax date, 12/7/2018. Time, 12:55 p.m. The tax, recording YouTube video. Complete. So that's clean and cool. The same thing you do if you're actually hosting the web service in the cloud, in a VPN, or in a shared hosting. The same process. So now we've been able to finish the aspect. In the next video, we're going to actually write the API to call all the tags which is assigned or which Adege created, because this is going to house almost all users. So we need to select from this table the Adege's tags so that it's going to actually visualize it. You could actually update it and you could actually delete it off. So we'll be doing all this and using APIs to actually structure this out and make this work. Thank you very much for hanging out with me throughout this video, and don't forget to subscribe to Delari Studios. Have a wonderful time. Don't go anywhere. Stay glued. There's going to be another part coming very, very soon. Bye bye for now.